everybody. Welcome to our session on Learning's Beepboop have had building their amazing virtual classroom app. If you don't already know about it already, you can find more about them over at beepboop.us. Maybe Matt, you can drop a link into chat for folks who want to click through. Hope you're all enjoying the conference so far. Thank you for tuning in. In the way of introductions, my name is Jonathan. I'm the head of solutions and success at Daily. Our big goal is to help millions of developers add video and audio to their websites and apps. We're also really honored to be sponsoring the summit this year, so really pleased to meet all of you. Today, I'm joined by my colleague Varun, Daily's Chief Product and Technology Officer. Varun's a smart guy. Previously, Varun was the CEO and co-founder of CoolStats, which was an analytics management and performance tool for real-time media communication systems. That's a lot of words. I hope I got that right, Varun. He's also known for his integral contributions to Web3C and the WebRTC protocol, which is technology that powers the platform like the one we're all using right now. So yeah, from Beepboop, very privileged to introduce Matt, their co-founder and CTO, who has built an incredible business, which we're excited to probe him about and hear more about regarding their journey, learnings, and vision for the future. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me. I'll keep an eye on chat throughout if we have any questions, but without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Varun, to kick us off and ask the first question.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Appreciate the strong introduction. Hi, Matt. I think we'll just keep it casual and we'll just start this conversation and see where it goes. For a lot of us in the call or like in the show right now, we don't know much about Beepboop, so we'd love to hear what the company does and how did you get to do what you're doing and how did you get to the success that you've already achieved with the company?
Sure, thanks Varun. And John, thanks for the warm intro. Good to see everybody. Hope your conference is going well. Just by way of introduction, Matt Douglas, CTO, co-founder of Beepboop, which is a live, on-demand, human-led education platform. And our audio and real-time communication component is powered by Daily, which John and Varun mentioned. Our big innovation at Beepboop is that we've turned the traditional classroom on its head. So typically in traditional classrooms, every additional student that's added to the class slightly or in a big way degrades the experience for everybody else. It makes teachers' lives a little bit more difficult. They get less opportunity to participate. But with the Beepboop method and the Beepboop classes, we've figured out a way, and this is kind of our secret sauce, but I'll give away a little bit of it here, so that every additional student that joins the class actually adds to the learning outcomes of everybody else. And teachers barely notice. So their stress levels are not increased in any way. And we started by offering Spanish classes to English speakers. And those classes are taught by Spanish teachers in Mexico, Peru, now Spain. Next week, we're adding Colombia and Uruguay. So we're growing rapidly, and we'll be expanding the English classes soon. And language learning is just beginning for us. My co-founders, Alejandro and Devin, started Beepboop in 2019. Their alpha version was built on a competitor of Daily's. I don't know if we're allowed to say this. It was built on Zoom. We treat that like a four-letter word around here, at least in Beepboop world, because of all the challenges that came along with that platform. But we launched on Zoom, and it was good enough to get us off the ground. And then we converted over to use Daily for all the great reasons we're going to talk about today in mid-2021.
So there's so many things that you touched upon, and we can go through like each one. I think the really high up on the list is like it's called Beepboop. Is there a story behind the name, or how did you come up with such a catchy name?
There's a great story behind it, and part of the reason for it, I just noticed when you said it out loud, you can't say Beepboop without smiling. And where that came from was when my co-founders, Alejandro and Devin, were discussing what they were going to call the company. They wanted to come up with something that was, it was also a word that our teachers could use during class to correct students' mispronunciations, for instance. So when a class is going on, one of our instructors will call on the student will respond. If the student got something just a little bit wrong or a lot wrong, the teacher will interrupt with a beep boop and then an explanation of what they didn't do quite right. And then the student repeats it back again. So beep boop was chosen specifically because you can't say it without a smile coming to your face. And that's intentional because when someone makes a mistake in class, that's not a bad thing. It's an opportunity to learn. So ingraining that in our company name was kind of a no-brainer. It's been really fun.
That's a fantastic story, and I remember I took a class a couple of weeks ago, with some of the folks on our team, and I can say even though it's not supposed to be stressful, I was really stressed because I think it was just names of animals, but you alluded to some of the secret sauce, and I wanted in the interaction, the user experience that you just talked about. Could you highlight more of the thesis around the user interaction that you have? Because I think that's fantastic, having experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, so when you're in a class with other people learning a new language, it's a very exposed feeling, right? You're exploring new words, new phrases. You're prompted to answer questions in something that's entirely foreign to you. And especially for those of us over the age of 25, which I assume all of us are, and many people in the session listening in, it's very difficult to learn something. Our brains are able to learn as we get past that sort of magic age of 25, but there's a different approach that you have to take. It requires a lot more focus. It requires minimizing distractions for sure. And the motivation to do it starts internally, but there need to be additional engagement mechanics while you're in the class to keep you motivated, to keep you feeling like you're learning and advancing your education, your learning, especially in language learning goals. So one thing we really focus on is minimizing distraction. And in an online classroom, typically people would have their videos on. In our environment, we did not have videos. It's entirely audio only with a shared screen, with the instructor sort of advancing the curriculum, the visuals that students are seeing and reading from and listening to their fellow students. So that's a big part of what we do as well. We can kind of talk about the ins and the outs of video and audio and where the pros and the cons are.
Let's take it there, because it's an EdTech conference and people want to understand how the user experience translates into something that's buildable. So let's start with how you structure the experience, how many users, are they all active? How do you call them? Do they all speak at once? Are there design decisions that you made as a consequence of the user experience?
For sure. Yeah, let me see if I can focus in on one of those in particular, which is the different types of people that are in the different types of participants that are in their classes. So of course, there's the instructor who is an experienced fluent Spanish speaker. The vast majority of our teachers are also teachers in classrooms in the countries, the cities that they live. And then there are three different types of participants in our classes. From a student perspective, there's our paid tier, the people who are funding the classes for everybody else, who get the most speaking opportunities. They get the most opportunity for correction from our charismatic, really helpful native Spanish speakers. There's the second tier down, which we call audience members. They're sort of participating audience members, though, with The Price is Right, when someone gets called up on stage, it's actually kind of thrilling. You alluded to the fact that it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but that cortisol or adrenaline, whatever is rushing through your body when that happens, actually promotes more learning. It gets your brain in this really active state where it's ready to receive new information and solidify it. So we've really leaned into that with our product decisions. And so with the audience concept, you never know when you're going to get called on, and you don't have to pay to be in the audience. That's part of our free tier. And when it's not your turn, we encourage our students to practice out loud. So even when other students are speaking and getting their corrective feedback and hearing beep boop every once in a while, everybody else in the class is practicing out loud because we have automatically disabled the microphones. And that granular control of microphones and who is being heard by whom at what time and what are they seeing and how they're participating as a group are kind of at the core of why we needed to move off of our previous platform and implement a lot more granular controls with the library APIs like what Daily provides. And then the third thing, third way of participating in class, I should say, is by observing. So many students reported that, well, I'm in the car and I can't really participate, or it's not safe for me to be speaking out loud, or I'm in a really noisy place and I'm not able to speak or really stay as engaged as I would like to be. So we offer a way for certain students to observe classes. It's almost like a live Spanish language learning podcast, which we think is kind of one of the first of its kind.
That's exciting. One thing that caught me, and I want to just maybe this is going down a rabbit hole, around moderation, because if I understood correctly, students can control their mics, but also the teacher can control their mics. Can you speak a little bit about the thought process and the user experience there?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll try to dance around the potential rabbit hole we might go down as well to keep it a little high level. But essentially, in our classrooms, there are two different ways that your microphone is enabled. At the beginning and the end of class, everybody's mics are enabled. You can always mute or unmute yourself for privacy reasons, of course, or in case your dog is making a lot of noise. But our system at the beginning and end of class enables everyone's microphone so they can have sort of a free-flowing, fun conversation with each other, get to know each other, do sort of a popcorn type discussion before the actual class starts. And then the structure of the class is what we call drill. The Beepboop drill concept is a call and response, tried and true in the classroom method that we have digitized. And that relies on only one person speaking at any time. So the teacher speaks, and then she calls on the student, and then the right student that's supposed to speak needs to reply. And thanks to the granular control that implementing a platform like Daily provides us, we can programmatically give the teacher plus the machine learning, the AI that we have built into our system, the ability to enable and disable microphones at exactly the right time. So it's a split second before the student's name is called, and then a split second after their turn is over and it moves on to another student is when the microphone comes on and off. And what that does fundamentally is it increases the flow of the class. So there are very, very few interruptions. Everybody's microphones are coming on and off. The in-browser experience that people have is very reliable. And it makes it where a teacher with not great internet in Lima, Peru, can teach a student and immediately respond to their slight mispronunciation in Melbourne, Australia, and it's like you're in the same room at the same time. It's that crisp and precise, which is super crucial as most people know, when you're learning a new language, is to get that really precise correction. So that interaction between teacher and student requires us to have a lot more granular control over microphones than you would expect in sort of traditional audio-visual sort of software like the Zooms of the world, or even what we have here in Hopin.
Yeah, I just noticed that John's wearing a shirt which says "You're on mute," which probably, since you don't have video, I'm assuming that they can't even see the person like trying to speak, right? So like you overcome that complexity of, am I on mute or not? Did I open the channel or not? Did they hear me? I think like you took away that complexity in addition to learning a language, which is in itself, as you said, over 25-year-old has their own like challenges. And actually, there's one thing that you brought up earlier, and again now, that most of your teachers are in Latin America or South America, and I'm curious, like, what the experience has been for like people joining from like places which seemingly would say they have good internet versus like places where they may be using mobile as the primary carrier. And I'm wondering if you've seen some of that and if there are things that you followed as best practices in those cases.
Yeah, it's an important, this might be an important rabbit hole for us to go down, in fact, because it's so core to the future of education, which if we're going to provide affordable, accessible education to the masses, then we've got to figure out how to work in low bandwidth situations, not just for students who have poor bandwidth, but for teachers that are suffering from sort of the same infrastructure problems. So that's essential. And at the heart of that is actually a decision that my co-founders made early on when we were still on a traditional platform. We were still on Zoom. They realized that not just the teacher, but the students all needed to disable their video to keep the quality of the audio high enough that a teacher could hear slight mispronunciations and make really precise corrections. So learning for them early on was, well, why don't we turn off the video and see if that helps? And sure enough, when you're not sending video, the audio quality is just a lot bigger pipe for the audio to go across. But some of the challenges with Zoom as well were that we were doing a shared screen situation, which is more information, way too much information, traveling across the same pipes, trying to keep up. So, occasionally when you do a screen share, things lag a little bit, and you really, in most every learning environment, especially language learning, the audio is the most crucial. So early on, they had already disabled video, and when we converted to daily, it was sort of out of the box available to us to either do audio or video, and we chose to keep it off for two reasons. One is the bandwidth issue. We open up more teachers who are able to teach from their phones, as well as more students able to access our classes if we have lower bandwidth requirements. But the other interesting learning in turning off those videos is that it made people more comfortable learning this new language than when you have this video on and all these eyeballs staring at you, and your nerves kind of really go through the roof even without the video, like you mentioned. It's a very exposed feeling for anybody who's trying to learn a new language, when you're not just doing it on your phone with some app where there's no humans involved, and you're actually learning to speak with other humans, which is really the reason all of us are learning to speak a new language in the first place. It really reduces the pressure and the barrier to additional motivation to come back to your next class and stay engaged if we don't include video either. So it's sort of hand in hand with solving for poor bandwidth situation.
And on the topic of, I guess, audio only, Matt, I'm actually nervous to speak right now, by the way, in case you beep-boop me or something like that, but I'll go for it anyway. And I wish my own name was fun to say, but there we go. I think, there's a fairly current trend we can say around audio-only apps, and perhaps the best known being Clubhouse, for example. At Daily, we've obviously got some direct experience with how customers prefer this approach, and for very similar reasons that you're alluding to. I think it's probably worth highlighting, as you say, that technically speaking, audio data is much cheaper than video, meaning apps can target much wider audiences, where the quality of the internet connection isn't so great, or their device is old or doesn't sometimes even have a camera built in, if that is the case. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Like there's this new world emerging, and it's still probably at that nascent stage where it's still quite exploratory, but the future of audio only applications is something to be mindful of. And I know obviously you're pioneering that in the world of language learning, but would you agree that there's probably still plenty of awesome use cases out there yet to be discovered, especially in the world of EdTech?
Yeah, for sure. We are very much in the early days of exploring what this new world of online learning really is. I think for anybody who's been in a virtual classroom, certainly over the last couple of years, forced to by a pandemic, but even before that, a lot of learning had moved online, it still wasn't that engaging. And I think you could make a strong case that online learning of all kinds has kind of plateaued, that there hasn't been a lot of innovation in this space. And part of it was because the tech wasn't quite there. And now that everybody has a device in their hands, the vast majority of people, certainly in developed countries have a device in their hand that allows them to connect to the internet. And as a result of all the protocol work, and Varun, I believe you had a hand in this, that has laid the foundation groundwork over the past decades, we are now at a place where the tech is caught up, but the innovation in learning hasn't quite taken off yet either, or we're right in the bleeding cutting edge of it. So this is like get in on the ground floor time for ed tech companies that are trying new things. Someone's going to crack the nut around online educational experiences that aren't just come to a class, listen to a lecture, leave the class, take a test. That is not going to work in a modern world of fewer, so many more distractions, lower attention spans. There's got to be more to it. And having a live class taught by a real human, aided by technology, and it be an on-demand thing that you can join, I think is one of the big directions that EdTech is going. Of course, I'm biased. We have a lot of proof points, and we've seen so much success so far. Certainly hearing from our students that this is unlike anything they've ever experienced before, and they can't wait to tell their friends about it. I think are pretty good evidence, at least, that we're onto something really, really profound.
I do like the fact that the world's evolving, because I think the technology now offers a platform to build innovative stuff. And just like the mobile did for Uber and delivery and all the companies that kind of use on-demand workers to do I wouldn't say simple jobs, but do different jobs. But I think bringing that to the knowledge workers, I can see a teacher, for example, using their idle time during the day or the evening to teach someone or a set of people over 45 minutes. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see that as knowledge workers using their time differently as a thing?
Completely, and that's right in line with another one of our overarching goals at Beepboop, is to create more of a gig economy for people who are experts in things. In this case, experts in the Spanish language, soon to be experts in the English language, teaching people who are trying to learn English. And then as we move beyond language learning, there are all kinds of other applications where this makes sense. where people kind of have slack time, lowercase s, slack time, that ideally they would be able to monetize in some way. Many of our teachers teach from bed. They wake up, they have a class at 8:30 that they're going to teach. They simply tap a button and log in, and they're teaching the class. Because they don't have video on, it doesn't matter what they look like. They love that. Students as well join classes from their cars, hopefully while they're not driving, but even from their bedrooms. This sort of on-demand, in the moment, I want to take a class right now, or even for our teachers, I want to teach a class right now and make a little bit of money that otherwise I would have had to get in my car. I would have had to have a car first, get in the car, fire up an app, go pick somebody up. Those are all high friction. Even today, they're high friction endeavors. Whereas someone who is on Beepboop or other platforms like ours will be able to monetize their voice, monetize their charisma, use the things that they're really good at or really expert at to put food on the table. And that's a really exciting thing that, I don't know, it gets my engineering team and everybody involved at Beepboop really excited about what we're doing.
And to touch on what Devin just said in the chat about the lower barrier to entry, like how low is it, Matt? What does it take to be a teacher on the platform? What do you have to do to get set up and start teaching classes?
Great question. We have about 19, soon to be 21, I think, teachers on the platform. They teach anywhere from 2 hours a week to 6 or 8 hours a week. Kind of depends on their schedule. And if someone's not available, then someone else has the ability to pick up their class. As we add more and more students to our platform, we'll need to be expanding our teacher supply as well, which means we really have to focus on keeping it a very intuitive product that helps them understand how it works without us having to do a whole lot of training. They don't have to install anything. It's merely logging into a browser either on their phone or from their desktop, and they're in. So they just have to authorize their microphone to be used by our app, and they're teaching the class. Our method is fairly straightforward to understand. The AI and the technical, the product, sort of hybrid product and tech features that we built help the teachers throughout the class, so they know who to call on. The students' names are displayed on the screen, and they are selecting them as they go without having to take attendance, without having to worry about, is this a student who should be in this class or not? Did they register? Are there any technical problems with the students themselves? Our app takes that entirely off their shoulders. It's not a burden that they have to carry. They don't even have to bring students to the class. The students are just there. It is similar to a ride-sharing gig economy type app, except for knowledge workers, like you mentioned, Varun. And once you understand the basics of, here's how you give a student a FBN, or you did well with that word, or here's how you give them a Beepboop, it's the class just kind of flows. And our content, here's another unique thing about Beepboop, I guess I haven't mentioned, is that we provide all the content. So some of our teachers build the topic content, the curriculum, and we launch a new topic pretty much every week, sometimes twice a week. And we've had our teachers who are native, their mother language is Spanish, of course, who have never seen a topic that they're about to teach come into the class. They'll see words that they've never seen before, for instance, because it's like Mexican slang and they're from Peru, and they will teach the class, and the students have absolutely no idea that the teacher had never even seen that word before. So you can teach this content sight unseen, which makes class prep basically nil. As we add more topics, the teachers don't have to look at the topic ahead of time or any of the content ahead of time to know how to teach it, because we rely on the method and the tech that helps them along the way. And it's really quite a profound moment when one of our teachers said, "I didn't know what that word was," after the class, and the students gave that teacher a 5-star rating and thought it was wonderful. And turns out even the teacher learned something during that class.
I imagine there's also the kind of feedback loop that you perhaps wouldn't get in a real classroom, just because of the fact that it's in a safe digital space. So the feedback that you're providing the teacher is, I'm guessing, also helping them become better teachers, right? And something magical about the sort of thing you can only do through the kind of product that you've created.
That's absolutely true. And we see a future where people teaching their native language on our platform can learn another language on our platform. And that serves as sort of our flywheel for recruiting teachers teaching the inverse language. So it can, once this rock is rolling downhill, it really picks up steam.
So I wanted to flag that we have about 8 minutes, and people have questions. They should definitely use the chat to ask them. But I think the last or final question that I have, and it was alluded to before, the technology is caught up, and you spoke a lot about technology. I'm kind of curious, without giving away the secret sauce about your product, what would it take for you to build a Beepboop today, knowing everything you know from the last 18-24 months of building Beepboop? What would be the shortcut? What would be the stack looking like? If someone's building an edtech platform today, is there lessons learned that you could share with them?
Sure. Yeah, I'm all about knowledge sharing and helping other teams create really great tech that are helping people learn or solving a major problem for the world. So I guess I'll be a little bit guarded with certain things that we've done that are core to our method and really gave us a fast track and allow us to develop really fast. But they're general things that help anybody get off the ground now, building a new app or a new product or a new service, which is, building in the cloud is a huge step forward compared to even just 15 years ago when you had to rack your own servers and hire people to understand how all the networking should be set up. So that's obviously we're standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to just getting a platform set up that we can develop against. That's for database and authentication and managing our APIs and our services. But the same thing can be said on the audio visual WebRTC side. Try not to use too much technical jargon here, but because we had Beepboop at a place where we had learned all these things from a no-code solution, like integrating, or not so much integrating, but providing our classes over Zoom. We learned a lot of things that got us off the ground quickly once we converted over to Daily. So we didn't have to fully conceptualize what our classes were going to be like from the get-go when we started writing the code. So I always encourage teams to find a no-code way to prove out your method, or the way you're going to be delivering your content, or how you're going to be recruiting your teachers and even students to jump on the platform. Do as much as you can in a no-code world to sort of prove out your hunches. And then that will save you a whole lot of time when you start to implement the actual tech itself. That's the next generation of your platform that will allow you to go to the next, to kind of enter into the stratosphere and reach massive scale. So that's, not to plug again, but that's where Daily has been super helpful for us. It's similar to not having to rack our own servers. We don't have to spin up our own turn servers and understand really anything about the inner workings or the guts of WebRTC. We just integrate with the library that's provided, and the platform that y'all have built has been truly something I would recommend to anybody who's building any sort of education platform online that has humans speaking with each other. And the reason that has been transformational for us or an example of how transformational that was for us is we had one engineer in our team who had zero WebRTC experience prior to starting to work on the prototype of our daily integration. He's an extremely experienced full stack engineer. He's listening. I hope Lucas, I don't mean to denigrate you in any way, but he'll be the first to admit he didn't have that kind of experience understanding how audio signaling worked at all. But because of this platform, the library that Daily provides, he didn't have to. He could really focus, and the other engineers on our team could work with him to focus on the most important thing for our business and for our students and teachers, which is the interactions of our app, making it incredibly user-friendly and engaging and motivating them to learn new things and come back for another class.
So Matt, I really hate to interrupt you when you're talking about Daily, but we've got a few questions which I think are great. So maybe closing out with those. So I guess the first is the plans to expand to other languages. And I'd love to build on that question actually. Do you have plans to extend beyond just language learning? Does the Beepboop model apply to other things? What are your thoughts on that?
It really does. And, Varun mentioned earlier that we're kind of in you alluded to this as well, John, that we're in the early days. But the learnings that we've come across, either intentionally or by accident, with language learning and specifically teaching Spanish to English speakers many of these things are applicable certainly far beyond Spanish and well beyond language learning as well. In any sort of education area or learning modality, there are tried and true ways to cement the knowledge, to be introduced to the information, to hear it repetitively, and then cement it after a good night's sleep and after hearing it a few times. So language learning is sort of a classic example of that. And there are hundreds of millions of people trying to learn a new language, if not billions of people trying to learn a new language. So the market is massive. So that's really why we started there. But there's nothing preventing us from moving beyond language learning. We've had discussions internally. We've had a number of potential partners reach out to us wanting to discuss how they might use our platform, partner with them to use our platform for other types of education areas. So as long as there's a role for a charismatic expert human to play in communicating the right or the wrong answer to something, sort of just generally speaking, this kind of platform is perfect for that. And as far as moving beyond Spanish, I think I mentioned that we have already taught our first English class. We're going to be teaching more and expand just like we expanded on the Spanish side. And because our app is a dynamically built, the content itself is dynamically built, we can teach English to not just Spanish speakers, but any native language, as well as Spanish to anybody who speaks any language. So we can dynamically change what's seen on the screen, and really the only language that's taught during our classes is the target language of the students.
I don't know if we have a hard cut here, but there are a few more questions. I would say, folks, please feel free to reach out to Matt directly. But should we go for it anyway, Varun, or do we have a hard stop?
We can go a couple more questions. I mean,
Sure.
There are some, and let's see if they kick us off the platform.
So let's keep it punchy, Matt. But I guess the one question which is really interesting, have you considered or are you exploring a hybrid model where there's some students in person, perhaps in a classroom, and some are virtual? Is that something that's on your mind?
We love thinking about the future of education likely being hybrid. Certainly as students are in kids specifically, but even college-aged students returning to the classroom now and finding a way to occasionally be entirely virtual, but occasionally be in person. Our app itself because the student is looking at their device on a shared screen and speaking out loud. Sorry, not shared screen, but in the Beepboop app. There's nothing preventing them from being in the same physical classroom with other people and interacting with each other both out loud. Wouldn't necessarily have to have the microphone on, but also, interacting on the screen while the class is going on. So there's nothing preventing this tech from being used in a physical public classroom as well. In fact, some of our Spanish teachers also teach English in their native country, so in their home country, so in Mexico, and they have used Beepboop in their classes to teach their Spanish-speaking students English all together. So it's already being used. Really interesting ways. You give people a solution that you think will be used in one way, and the technology kind of takes off, and they use it for something else. So to me, that's where a lot of the innovation is. I think there's certainly a future for that.
Great. And I guess our final question then to close us out, or my interpretation of it is, someone asked what natural language tools you're using, or the actual Spanish teachers. I think the idea is that they're actual Spanish teachers, but if we were building on that question, I'm assuming there's plans in the future to bring algorithmic tools to Beepboop to either try, do live transcription or something along those lines. Any thoughts for how that technology can be used?
Yeah, so I said I was going to kind of avoid a few of the secret sauce components that are going to drive us into the future, but I will touch on one aspect of this, which is, if online learning is sort of cutting edge, then the NLP component and DeepGram is one example that's doing sort of live transcription. I think has an integration with Daily as well. That's kind of is really bleeding edge, and it's nowhere near perfect yet, but it's passable. And I think we're a long way from it really replacing the human in the loop and an artificial intelligence is going to find it very difficult to be charismatic or to keep things engaging, like a sort of experienced teacher who is used to being in a classroom and working with students and being empathetic with them is able to do. But if you marry the technology with the human, they together are going to be even better. So a hybrid approach on the tech and personal touch side is also a big part of the future, I think, and NLP is just the beginning.
Thank you. Tidbits of secret sauce there, Matt. Appreciate that. That's great. I guess we'll wrap it up. So thank you so much for your time. I'll let Varun say his thanks since he did most of the work here. But yeah, thank you, Matt, for a really interesting talk through Beepboop.
Well, thank you. Appreciate all the insights that you could share with us. I'm hopeful the community finds this interesting and they can take your learnings and apply them to their own stuff. So thank you for being candid and sharing your experience. Thanks, John. Thanks, Matt.